Welcome back. All right, so one question that I get a lot when we do the live streams on this channel is about who my favorite wrestlers are and have been and all of that. So this is not my favorites of all time. This is right now. And I've restricted it to AEW and WWE wrestlers. Went through both of their rosters and made sure I wasn't missing anybody. I'm going to do a video now on my 15 favorite female wrestlers right now between the two companies, and I will do a video later on my 15 favorite male wrestlers as well. So stay tuned for that. But let's go ahead and start at 15. Penelope Ford. You know what? I'll put AEW. I didn't actually count how many of each company I have, but Penelope Ford, for somebody who's been off for a couple of years, she's still got the ability to wrestle at a pretty high level. I've always thought she's underrated. Um, I think she's a good wrestler. I think there's a ton of potential there. And so we'll see whether or not she continues to progress towards. I don't know if there's a title in her future, but maybe the TBS one, right? Maybe not the main title, but maybe that secondary one that's being held by Mercedes Monet until they decide to push her towards the big belt there that's currently held by Mariah May. But at this point, Penelope Ford's 15, and not on the list is Mercedes Monet. I never would have thought I'd see the day that the former Sasha Banks was not in my top 15, but she's not. Number 14. Now, technically, this one's from NXT, but I'll write WWE because it is the same company. Fallon Henley. So I hadn't been watching NXT for a while, and I started up again, and Fallon Henley was jobbing. She was losing every week, and I couldn't figure out why. She's a good wrestler. She's got the look. She's got the ability. She can talk. And then she turns heel, and it just works, right? Fallon Henley now has a secondary title in the NXT ranks, and I think she's got a ton of potential. When they call her up to the main roster, I think she could be one of those ones that, has some success at NXT, but maybe she has more success on the main roster than she does in NXT. But she's definitely progressing in the right direction. Number 13, another AEW wrestler at this point, Julia Hart. When Julia Hart joined the House of Black, it worked. It worked because the cheerleader bit that she had been doing with the blondes there, it didn't work. It wasn't going to with Griff Garrison and Pillman Jr. there, and so when she turned heel, it clicked, and it reminded me of another one who is going to be on this list. Isn't no, I didn't include Alexa Bliss because Alexa Bliss hasn't been on for a while, and honestly, it's just so open ended on what's going on with Alexa Bliss. When she'll come back, when she comes back, which role is she going to take on? Would she maybe join the Wyatt Six? Would she be a face, be a heel? But Julia Hart reminds me of Alexa Bliss. Once she turned heel, it worked. Once Alexa Bliss turned heel, of course, in NXT, it was fantastic. And Alexa was one that had some success in NXT, but had much more success on the main roster. Julia Hart definitely had a lot more success after she turned heel in AEW, and it's interesting what's going on with her currently. We'll see if the storyline with Julia Hart leads to her getting back into the title chase or what happens. Number 12, another AEW wrestler. See, so while I'm not a big fan of AEW shows, I do like their wrestlers, including Britt Baker. The internet wrestling community, from what I've seen, not necessarily huge fans of Britt Baker. There's all this talk about her being like mean backstage and she politics and yada. It's honestly, politicking in wrestling has been there for as long as there's been wrestling. If you're close to the promoter, you're probably going to get a better spot on the card. Whether it's right or wrong, it's just part and parcel of wrestling. Britt can wrestle. The one thing I've noticed though since she came back, she seems smaller than she was before she got hurt. So for Britt, I don't know if that's a sign she's in better shape, if she's lost some muscle mass, or if I'm just seeing things. Maybe she's just wearing different trunks and it looks different. But yeah, Britt Baker to me seems a little smaller than she did. But she's still, the ring psychology's there. She has the presence. And Britt Baker, for all of the negativity that sometimes gets thrown at her, I could see her, if she switched over to WWE, being a main event star and being a big deal. I could absolutely see that for Britt Baker, especially when she's in Pittsburgh, right? You know, when she goes to Pittsburgh, she wears the Steelers. I think the Steelers colors work for her. I think she should wear those full time. It just works. Number 11, back to NXT on this one. Another one that's coming back from injury. Cora Jade has all of the potential in the world. Cora Jade is an excellent wrestler who got hurt just when it felt like she was about to get somewhere, and now she's back. She's turned heel again, which works for her at this point. I think having her and Roxanne together, if they were to be called up to the main roster, them going up together could be a very interesting way to do that. But Cora Jade, she's young, she's got all the potential in the world, and she definitely has a unique look, which helps. With women's wrestlers, I think almost as much as men, having a unique look and a unique presence is a big part of getting over with the crowd. Because when wrestlers look the same or they have a similar moveset and look the same, and going back to the 80s, that was really kind of common. And so it was kind of difficult to weed out who was who and be unique. But Cora Jade, definitely a unique wrestler, and I do think the sky's the limit for her. Number 10 on the women's side of things, back to AEW, and it's their champ. Mariah May, she's very young. She's very talented. Mariah May is a supremely talented wrestler, and I don't blame AEW for getting the title on her when one could argue she hadn't wrestled as many matches as some of the others. And climbing the ladder in AEW, it's odd. They did have the win-loss thing they were tracking, you know, and the rankings they were tracking as well, and that all seems to kind of gone by the wayside. But I mean, they still show the record on the screen, but does it matter? Not really. But Mariah May she's very, very good in the ring. Obviously, she has an excellent look, a different kind of presence, and the whole glamour thing that she's doing, that can work. That can work. The cocky sort of glamour side of things can work. Almost like what Fabulous Moolah's character was way back in the day, but not as cheesy, if that's a way to put it. Sometimes, and again, when I started watching wrestling, it was in the 80s where Moolah was already older than the other lady wrestlers, and some of it just came across as kind of cheesy. And I remember thinking in the back of my mind, why can't anybody beat up the old lady? So, again, I was a kid, and I was like, she's a lot older than the other. Why can't they just beat her up? So, number 9, going back to WWE, and it is Liv Morgan. Liv Morgan would probably be higher on the list for me if she was better. And it's an interesting discussion to have because Liv Morgan works as a heel. I think the stuff with her and Dominic Mysterio is great. I don't always buy her in the ring. I don't always buy her offense. And there's times where she still kind of plays it almost like she did as a face. There have been a couple of times where she's coming to the ring and I'm whispering at the TV, Liv, you're a heel. Stop it. But yeah, Liv Morgan, definitely a very talented wrestler. I'm glad that with her time in the Riot Squad, which was a group that I always thought WWE didn't pay enough respect to, all three of those wrestlers were very good. And I think giving any of them a run with the title at the time that the Riot Squad was around would have been awesome. But anyways, that's where having a secondary title works. So that U.S. championship, and we'll get to the future U.S. champion in a bit on here, but Liv Morgan, number 9 on the list. Number 8, it's Io Sky. It's always Io Shirai to me, though. Dakota Kai gets an honorable mention, too. Dakota's gone through a lot injury-wise, and hopefully she's able to stay healthy from here. But Io Sky is absolutely fantastic. Is this the first one that I've seen wrestle live that I've got on the board? Yes, I don't think I've seen Liv Morgan wrestle live. I know I've seen Io Sky, though, and she's excellent. At times, she hasn't connected as well with the crowd as some of the others, and I say this on the main roster. NXT, the crowd loved her. At times, the crowd's kind of dead for an Io match, which throws me off a little bit. but Io Sky is a very talented wrestler. I don't know if she's going to win the title back at any point soon. I don't think so, but with Triple H running things, it's possible. Io Sky, just absolutely one of my favorites. And when she came over to NXT, I was kind of like, I don't know, this Io Shirai, we'll see. And then just watching her, and of course, there was that one War Games match in NXT way back when. That's why you want her in War Games now. She can do that on the main roster. She's crazy. She's fearless, absolutely fearless in the ring. Number 7, or in the sky. Number 7. Oh, I forgot to put WWE. Also WWE at number 7. Don't start putting WWE until you're done with this part. Roxanne Perez. The one question mark with Roxanne Perez is when she gets called up to the main roster, will the fact that she's smaller work against her? I want to say no, that it won't. I would use Alexa Bliss as an example of how it doesn't. But would it make it more difficult for her to connect to the crowd? Maybe. And when she does end up on the main roster, and I think that will happen, maybe you put her with, sort of like what Liv has right now with Raquel Rodriguez. Maybe you give her a bigger wrestler to sort of the bodyguard type, like what Diesel was to Shawn Michaels back in the day. That's the farthest back where I can remember, although Big Bubba Rogers, who became the Big Boss Man, he played that role. But Roxanne Perez, I'm not saying to Shawn Michaels, just Big Bubba Rogers and NWA for a while there with the Midnight Express. But Roxanne Perez is a very talented wrestler, and she's great on the microphone. That is a big thing. And it feels like with WWE, that's where they're ahead of AEW. For me personally, the promos in WWE are better, and they're more compelling than the promos with AEW. Number 6, another WWE wrestler. There's a time where if I did this list, Asuka probably would have been number 1. Would have been during that NXT run where she was undefeated. Asuka is fantastic. And the interesting thing, too, is when they were doing the whole storyline with Damage Control turning on Bayley, I don't know how they kept a straight face with Asuka. Asuka, the reaction she has, and also an honorable mention to the other member of the group, which is Kairi Sane, who I almost put on this list too. Kairi Sane is very talented, and also the facial reactions of Kairi Sane during all those Bayley backstage segments were great. But Asuka steals everything she's in. She can be a heel or a face like that, and it's easy. It's easy for her to get the crowd to love her or boo her. And when you can have the crowd in your hands like that, that's something that I really appreciate about a wrestler, is that ability to make the crowd hate you or love you at the drop of a hat. And Asuka has that. And when we get her over to the men's side, that's something that definitely drives who my favorite male wrestlers are as well. Number 5 on the list, another WWE wrestler. I honestly do not know how many of each I wrote down. I just wrote a bunch down and said, okay, that's good enough. I've got 15 of each. Let's go. Tiffany Stratton. Everything I said about Mariah May, we could say about Tiffany Stratton. The difference being, WWE is definitely taking their time with Tiffany to get her over on the main roster, build her up. And by building her up, I mean she's been losing a lot. Keep an eye on it, because at times wrestlers are getting, loss after loss after loss. And it's like, man, they're getting jobbed out. It does not feel that way with Tiffany. It feels like they're waiting, they're biding their time, and at the right moment, they're going to strike. And Tiffany Stratton could be huge on the main roster. And I think she's going to defeat Nia Jax and win that belt. And I think I don't know if they're going to turn her face. I don't know if her shtick works as a good guy. It feels like the crowd could get behind her, they turn her face, and then within 6 months, she's back to being a heel, because her entire character naturally works as the bad guy. Naturally works as the one that the crowd should be rooting against. Not that I've booed her, not that I would, because I think Tiffany Stratton's fantastic. Number 4 on the list, I do have the Tiffy Time shirt after all. Number 4 on the list, and I was honestly not sure where she would be on the list if I was doing this, say, 6 months ago. Would she have been on the list? So some wrestlers need a lot of time in developmental and some really don't. Stephanie Vaquer does not need a lot of time in developmental. In fact, I would say that, give her like 6 months on NXT, give her a couple of title shots. Don't give her the title. Have Roxanne Perez hold the belt and then move Vaquer to either SmackDown or Raw. If they do away with the brand split, which is always possible, Vaquer be fine. I don't think she'll get lost in the shuffle. She has a unique moveset, a unique look, and she's very good. She's got her character down, and I really really enjoy watching her fight. In NXT right now, I think the women's division is it's a deep division. It's very talented, and there are a lot of young ladies there right now who I think are going to have very long careers in the ring. Vaquer could be one of those. Number three, now we get an AEW wrestler. This one should not surprise people. So, before Jamie Hayter became this big deal, the first time she had a run in AEW, where she was like mid card, she was losing a bunch, and before she lost a significant amount of weight. Before that, I had actually purchased an autographed photo from her and thought that she had a very good future. I felt like Jamie Hayter had a really strong future ahead of her, and I'm glad that eventually it seems like the rest of the world caught on that she's very good at what she does. And she has just this certain style, this certain attitude, and it works. And I do think that AEW will give her the strap again. I don't know when, I don't know how long it's going to take, but I think she will be the women's champion. I think a feud between Mariah May and Jamie Hayter would be absolutely excellent. I think that would be a lot of fun. Obviously, Mariah May is going to have to deal with Toni Storm again. I know Toni Storm apparently retired, but when I saw that being reported on by one of the YouTube channels I watch on wrestling, like, well, she's retired. What do you think? She's not. It's a storyline. What are you talking? It's a storyline. She's not actually retired. So she's going to come out and beat up Mariah May. My guess is on this week's Dynamite. And Jamie Hayter should be there. And once Mariah May's done with Toni Storm or whatever other feud they have going for her, Jamie Hayter should be the one. Absolutely should be the one. And looking forward to seeing Jamie with the title again. Number 2. There it is. Back to WWE. And I'm really glad when the crowd catches on. There are some very smart wrestling fans. And smart wrestling fans have figured out Chelsea Green works her ass off. She gets like 2 or 3 minutes to show sometimes. And she makes sure she steals it. Even if she's going into the ring for a 30-second match where she's going to lose. Her ring entrance, her whole shtick, it's great. And so she makes the most out of the least amount of time. This is the kind of thing Vince McMahon used to preach about a lot of, you got to steal the brass, take the brass ring. I think that's what he meant was, at least part of it, is maximize your minutes. If you're only getting a few minutes to show, make them memorable. Make the fans talk about you. Whether you win, whether you lose, make sure people are talking about you. Chelsea Green has that. Chelsea Green being thrown together with Piper Niven to me felt like it was just, we don't know what to do with these two, so we're going to put them together and figure something else out later. A lot of tag teams get formed that way, I think. But Chelsea's made it work, and now everybody's rooting for her to be U.S. champion. And much like Tiffany Stratton, I don't know if Chelsea Green works as a face. I think she can. When we went to the show in Vancouver last year, Chelsea Green in the ring cut a very good promo off camera, not on TV. She cut a very good promo about how much she loved Vancouver and she was glad to be home. And she talked a little bit about the Canucks. She was great. The crowd loved her. And then just to make sure the crowd didn't cheer her too much, she then turned against the crowd and talked about how she's glad she left Vancouver and she's glad she lives somewhere else. And then the crowd all turned against her, kind of, but not really. Chelsea's fantastic. If you watch wrestling like I do, I don't worry as much about who's winning and losing. I look at the moves. And I'm always more interested in the one that's taking the move, the one that's getting the body slam, the kick to the head. How do they sell? How well do they sell? Do you believe that they're hurt? Chelsea can make you believe it. sometimes she's kind of cartoony with her body language, but she can make you believe she's really hurt. And she has made, honestly, a lot of hay off of going through those tables from the top of a ladder. And it's not the danger side of things, although there's definitely some danger in going through tables from that high up. No matter how much they're gimmick, no matter how much you think everything's fake, that has to hurt. That has to suck. And so Chelsea doing that, and then the way that she portrays it on social media too, like you can't use this, and I can't believe they keep stop showing this when she's retweeting it, meaning she's saying, okay, look at this, but she's still doing it in character. She gets it. She gets the whole wrestling thing, and fans respect her for that. And so now we want to see her get somewhere as a result. And I think it's fantastic. I think it's great. And she's from BC here, so all the best to her. Hopefully she ends up being the world champion at some point. Which brings us to number 1, and it's another WWE wrestler. And then I'll do a quick count here. Rhea Bloody Ripley. Rhea Ripley. It's interesting because the first time I saw her was the Mae Young Invitational. I think that would have been the first time I would have seen her, and I was like, she's okay. She's bigger than a lot of the other ladies, so she'll probably do well for herself. Okay moveset, okay look. Now her look's fantastic. It is Chris Motionless from Motionless in White. It is very, very similar, and Motionless in White do her entrance music. But the whole goth look works for her, and you legitimately, when you watch her, and the match that I saw in Vancouver, which was a dark match, was her against Ivy Nile. She could have pinned Ivy at any time she wanted to. The size difference was ridiculous, and Rhea, you just get the feeling like she could legitimately beat the hell out of all the women on the Raw roster, and maybe half the men as well. I do want to see Rhea Ripley versus Dominic Mysterio. I think that'd be great at WrestleMania. I'm not sure how you make that work or whatever, but I think that'd be a great match. And Rhea, I still think one of the issues for Liv Morgan is that when Rhea's in a ring with Liv and you see them next to each other, I have a hard time believing Liv Morgan could hurt Rhea Ripley. Like it to me is not entirely different than when you have Dave Bautista in a ring with Rey Mysterio. It is not entirely different to me. Rhea's shoulders are ridiculous. That woman is just an absolute monster in the ring, and I mean that in the best, most complimentary way. And when her music hits, I pop. That's the thing that I use to decide. So how much do I like this wrestler? Well, do I pop when they come out? And if I'm like, oh, this is going to be great, then yeah, they're up near the top of the board. And if I don't, then they're not on the board. So if you're wondering where Charlotte Flair is, she's not in my top 15. Anytime Charlotte's out there, I will admit I kind of groan because I know she's going to go for the title. I know she's going to win it. And it was pretty obvious early on that they were trying to get her that record amount of title reigns because she kept dropping it, getting it back, dropping it, getting it back. It was like 7-time champion. I'm like, but all those title reigns were like a week. What are we doing here? Why? But anyways, that is something that drives me nuts when you see wrestlers hot-shotting titles, and then the announcers are like, they're a 5-time champion. That's like Hall of Fame numbers. No, look at the length of those title reigns, boys. They don't last that long. It is not Ric Flair territory at all. It's not even close. But there you go. My 15 favorite female wrestlers at this time. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support as always. And like I said, I will be talking about the men. That'll either be a video tonight or tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. I will talk to you again soon.